The issue of holistic health is big enough that you can find over 10,000 books on Amazon about the topic. With a Google search, you can find millions of informative articles with enough varied philosophies to make one's head spin. Our interview today is with Adrien Cotton, who didn't plan on speaking about perimenopause or menopause as she started out working in government, but that changed. So stay tuned for a fascinating interview approaching holistic health with a focus on prevention, alternative therapies, and emotional well-being. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media with resources and ideas for you at mid-career or half-time of life. Check out our online courses where we want you to not only start, but finish. Books available in all versions and songs available for immediate download with sheet music and instrumental accompaniment tracks. Our musicals are family-friendly with great music that's memorable and inspiring. Sign up at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter for weekly updates. Now to our episode. Well, welcome to Adrien Cotton. I'm so glad to have you here, and you are all in beautiful red today. If you are watching the video, you will see Adrien. Beautiful person as well. So we are going to have a wonderful conversation. And the focus of this podcast, of course, it's not just for women, but it's for men too. But it's the mid-career, half-time of life. But today we're dealing primarily with some women's issues. But you men, you might want to listen in because these are very, very important for you to know as well. And after having 3 children and birthing 3 children and going through a number of stages myself, I really appreciate the conversation that we are going to have. So thank you, Adrien, for being with us today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here with you.
And I want you to give our audience a little brief background. I like my guests to introduce themselves. That you've been in government. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes.
And you made this huge life change. Yes. And so I want you to give us a little bit of that background, a little taste of what you did and why you transitioned in the area that you are in now, which is really health and wellness and the holistic, avenues with that, especially with perimenopause and menopause.
You bet. I'm happy to introduce myself. So first of all, what's really important is I am from Southern California. So what I am doing now and what I was doing in government all goes back to my growing up as a little girl in Southern California, going to the beach after school. And that is because growing up in Southern California in the 60s and 70s, I learned a lot about how to care for my body. Fast forward to when I was 22 years old after undergrad, I came to Washington, D.C. because it was my dream to come to D.C. and work in politics, government, public affairs, something of that ilk. I got an amazing job. And over the course of 17 years, yes, I worked for 2 presidents. I worked for a congressional, the chairman of the budget committee of the U.S. House. I worked in corporate America. I had a big job. I had about 63 staff when I was 30 years old. And I found that people here in Washington weren't very fit. And I put that in quotes because fitness for many people is a definition that can be largely about their fitness, their physical fitness. But I believe that fitness is a much bigger picture of a person is how fit are you? How well are you? So I found that the individuals here that I was working with and I was having fun with, I was not finding that their fitness was very serious. So over the course of that 17 years, I had this dream to get in health and wellness, but I also had this dream to be a corporate CEO. So I put the two of them together. After my last job in public affairs, I was the head of public affairs for a large company in this area. And I realized it was not feeding me. It was not fueling what I really wanted to do. So I left that job and I started a strength training gym in our little town here in Old Town Alexandria, right across from the Potomac, right across from the Capitol. And I've never looked back, because I feel as if any industry now, it's really important for the individuals who show up in that industry to look at their health and wellness in a very, very intentional and serious way. And so what I do now, I've had several different iterations of my career since owning the strength training gym. And then I started a women's only practice of working with just women in midlife. And that's what I do now. For the past 5 years, I am a women's health and wellness professional expert. I've worked with over 2,500 women and some men, because I do believe that midlife health and wellness issues are men and women, impact men and women.
Yep.
And when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, all men have colleagues, daughters, sisters, nieces, aunts, spouses, and it impacts them as well. So I work with women exclusively on how they can feel their best self, but most important, feel better in their body than they did when they were in their 20s and 30s.
That is a big promise, because
Yes.
when we look back to 20s and 30s, there's some challenges that we have at this point in our lives.
Indeed.
And I'm probably a little farther along than you are. But there are some challenges that we deal with our health and wellness, and with being able to there's certain things that are harder to do at this stage of our life than was when I was younger. But still important to keep with great habits. And I know we're going to talk about that today, because that's part of what you speak about. So why don't you tell about your experience, because your experience with perimenopause and menopause was kind of life-changing for you in some of your focus.
Yes.
So why don't you share a little bit about that? And I am sure that there are some listeners that go, oh, that is me, when you are describing it, and I am sure.
Yes. And my dream is to work with women in their mid-30s eventually, because in your mid-30s, we are still typically women are, and I hate to put women in a box, because we're all in a different place in our careers and our family lives and in our vocations of life. However, at that point in time, you're heading toward the height of your career. You may or may not be there. You're heading into a long-term relationship, or you're in one, and you're making lots of decisions around it. And not even imagining that what's going on in your body is starting to happen now in your mid-30s. So perimenopause is the phase of life where we are preparing for reproduction to end. So perimenopause is a phase, it's a phase, a biological phase for women. Every woman goes through it across the globe. Every woman.
Every woman, yes.
Every woman. Whether it happens naturally or it happens medically, every woman experiences perimenopause. Some experience it where it's just a breeze and they really have no symptoms, and other women like me have many symptoms. And it's more common to have a number of symptoms. So what happens to our bodies is our hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, are starting to cycle around. We aren't having a decline in estrogen just quite yet in the first phase of perimenopause, and I'll tell you about mine in a minute. What's happening is your progesterone is starting to decline. And so that is the cause of all kinds of symptoms, like allergies start when you're in perimenopause, migraines, hair loss, weight gain. I had what are called the core four. I had weight gain. I had sleep disturbance. And when we say sleep disturbance, I was like the poster child. I don't know if I ever slept between the years of about 4 and 10 of my kids, because I have twins. Mm-hmm. You have increased anxiety for lots of reasons. Women at this phase in our lives are typically, again, we're heading into the height of our career. We could be taking care of children, and we could also be taking care of elderly parents. We're busy.
Yes,
So we're not
very.
really paying attention to the fact that we're stressed out more than we thought we were. We just know we are.
Yes.
And some of it has to do with perimenopause.
Hmm.
And then vaginal dryness is a very, very typical and common symptom of perimenopause as you get into stages 2, 3, and 4 of perimenopause. So what I was experiencing probably my mid 40s until I reached 50 was what I call my perimenopause hell, my perimenopause prison, because I had no idea, and I was in the fitness industry. So I was trying every different diet known out there on the internet. I was trying every new fitness hack. I knew that this was not intuitive because I know, because I'm in the industry, that diets don't work. Every study known to man and women done on diets, they don't work. However, there I was dieting and running myself and trying to get as much cardio as possible. I was shrinking calories as much as possible, which is what most women do. We deprive ourselves of calories because we think that's the answer to feeling better in our body. And then we try to get in all kinds of cardiovascular exercise because we think that the more we sweat, the more we're going to lose weight, because that's the message that we were told. And it actually worked in our 20s and 30s. When I was in my mid 40s, it was not working. So that's my perimenopause prison. I think we can probably move on from there. I met some really, really beautiful people who helped school me on actually what was going on. And I then dove into this practice of understanding the way that a woman's body works during this period of time, and that we really can feel better. I feel better. I'm 57 and a half. I feel better now than I ever have. Definitely better than I did at 47 and a half. Oh, yes. 37 and a half. Yes, I was dieting and running. 27 and a half. Yes, I was dieting and running. 17. Yes, I was dieting and running. I'm not dieting.
Yeah, that's great.
I love to run, but it's not for weight loss.
You mentioned a couple things, and I just wanted to highlight those. Is that you like to start working with women in their 30s?
I do.
Officially, according to the internet, the half-time of life starts at age 40. I think it even starts a little earlier in some of the women's lives. I was one of those unusual people that I really didn't know I was going through perimenopause and menopause. I mean, I had, a little bit of the symptoms, but I just thought, oh, who knows? I would kind of slough it off. Sure. And in fact, I was just talking about, because I just had like another grandchild, my third granddaughter, actually. After having 3 boys, it's nice. It's kind of fun having some granddaughters. But it was interesting. It's, after you experience our first son was 10 pounds. So it was so, much pain and all of that. And it's like, after that, I think my tolerance must have gone up or something, because I didn't even really recognize some of those symptoms. When I look back, I did have them. I did have some, but I sort of ignored them. And what my cautionary tale is to some people is just to listen to that body a little bit more and realize that you could be in this stage. And it can wreak havoc on a number of areas. It can, of our lives, whether it's our personal lives with our spouse, whether it's on, again, our weight gains and not understanding what's happening with the body and experiencing some of those things. So I think those couple things that, you might not have a huge amount of symptoms, but still to listen to the body, I think that's important, and start earlier than you think. So those were really good words of advice there. So, and now when you talk about like balance of life, and we're talking about being in a mid-career, midlife, and all of the things that we balance. Many women are having children a little bit later. In fact, a couple of my sons are having them, with their wives. They're a little bit later stage, which was smart because they married wonderful women. But now, how are they going to balance their families, many times young children, and growing up older, especially if you're caring for older family members, and they're balancing all that they have in their life and the quality of life. And many times they're still working because they either need to work or they want to keep working. It's okay to keep wanting to work if you can work those out. Somebody has to raise your children. So just to work it out to where you can still raise your children. A lot of times you have a spouse that will help you do that, or family members, but also the career, all your career goals and your health and wellness. What do you do? How do you balance all of that?
Oh,
And
it's
what
a good
advice
question.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit because this is related to your question, is that how do we define midlife?
Yes.
I really have learned so much from the beautiful work that Dr. Brene Brown has written about and studied on what midlife really is. And her theory really helps open up the eyes of many women in our community at Adrien Cotton. And it's just a phase. It's a period of life when you realize something's different. And I actually want to look forward to more time than less time. So we teach in our program that if you change the way you think when you wake up in the morning, a lot of women wake up thinking, I have so many things to do and not enough time. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you changed that definition and said, I have the next 40 to 45 years to do what I really want to do with my life. Yes. And I have the next 16 hours of the day to complete or accomplish some of those things I really want to do. It's a completely different mindset. So if we can look at midlife as truly an opportunity, we are wiser than we were in our 20s and 30s. Right. We know that. We know the way the brain works. We know that the brain is wiser. It's collected all of this information up until we've reached this place, and we make better decisions and we have more wisdom. So we have wisdom to go to your second question, which is, really, how do you balance all of this? Well, we have to change the definition of what it means to be fit. We have to change the definition of being well and being holistically well. In our program, we truly believe, yes, fitness is important, exercise is important, and how you fuel yourself with food is very important. However, when we make decisions around how we sleep and how we manage our stress, those two components of our wellness, sleep and stress, play a very large role in how we're going to approach our food and our diet and our exercise. So I believe, and I've seen it happen time and time again, that if you can shift your mindset about sleep, that sleep is something that is incredibly important, not only for how I feel in my body and how I fit in my jeans, or we're coming up to the summer months and I'm going to feel better in my clothes, but really, how long am I going to live? Sleep is a really big indicator of longevity. Sleep, proper and quality sleep, not just quantity of sleep, but quality sleep is a very big indicator of dementia and Alzheimer's. This is now the time. If you're in your early 40s and perhaps sleep is not that big of a priority of yours, or maybe you're struggling with it, it's okay. There are a lot of people who are having there are like a third of our population struggle with insomnia or multiple awakenings in the night. There are solutions. I can teach some of them. There are a lot of really great experts out there, but your sleep is going to lead you to less stress the following day. You're going to be less reactive and you're going to be more responsive. Then you're going to look forward to moving throughout your day and not stressing out if you don't get to that hour-long fitness session that you probably didn't have time for anyway. Right. Instead, you're going to move throughout your day. You're going to do 1 minute here, 5 minutes here. This morning, it took me about 30 minutes. I set my timer for 30 minutes. Do I want an hour? Yes. But today it wasn't in the cards. So 30 minutes was awesome. And I might even pick up another 10 later today. And then when it comes to feeding ourselves, we have to feed ourselves with food. Food is not the enemy. I teach in my program and in my Master Menopause Now program that now in midlife is the time to change your relationship with food. The counting calories and having this punishing relationship with food, on again, off again, diet, no diet, need to stop, because what it does is it's incredibly stressful to your system. So I believe in a balance of all these things, including with your time. So it's sleep, it's stress, it's food, it's exercise. And then I have calendar as part of my program. I have the wellness wheel, as you know, and in my wellness wheel, we do include calendar. And the reason why is because if we don't make time for any of these items on my, or these spokes on my wheel, it won't happen. So we have to find a balance of these things, and we should choose to find a balance of these things because they're all proven by science. Scientifically proven, you will live a longer life, a better life, and you'll feel really good in your body. So it's a matter of taking time of midlife, of being a little bit selfish about your self-care. And it may be 5 minutes in the morning. That may be all you'll get.
Yep.
Rather than thinking about that hour-long class that you never got to.
Yes, it's really interesting. The mindset is so important here. And I think I came from, some of the past generation. You kind of were shamed if you were going to take a nap or if you were going to take a break. And I remember this, especially having young children it's one of the most exhausting times of your life. I remember crawling under the crib one time, just getting the baby asleep and taking quite a short nap because I was so tired.
Desperate.
Yes. Yeah. You're just desperate for that. So, and I've learned now, I used to be able to skimp on sleep quite a bit because I'll be in the studio. I've got all of these, deadlines. A lot of them are self-imposed, but I've done, work for others too. And a lot of, contracted work. And so you're getting stuff out. You've got deadlines and everything else. And so I'll get up if I'm awake in the middle of the night and I'll work an hour or two. But now I'm realizing, boy, I really need that sleep and time going to bed at the proper time is one of my big keys because I still will get up early. It does. My body wakes up. I say it wakes up with the cows because I was born on a dairy farm. It just wakes up early automatically. So even though, I moved away from them very, very early, but it still has that, I guess, that background of, we got up early growing up. And so that's ingrained in me. So it's important for those habits, figure out your own body. And I work with a lot of artists that they are late night people. They write it late.
Sure.
And they can sleep in. Hey, good for you. Good for you if you've worked out your schedule that way. But you've got to figure out at least what works for you. And so you've got some really great keys here with mindset and with our scheduling and with saying, it's okay. It's okay to not, be, on your run for an hour or do, I used to do the same thing, go out for a 7-mile run and do, all of those now until my knees sort of gave out. So, I mean, not completely, but I knew they were going to if I kept that up. And it was, there's, just little principles that we can understand, timing of food, the types of food and all of it, study your body and in fact, know what your body is going to do again. So, well, let's kind of move on to another area that you talk about with confidence. And there are so many keys to confidence, and it's knowing your purpose. It's knowing, there's so many things I speak about in my Hero Mountain Summit and how it builds confidence. But a couple of those areas for confidence, you are really ingraining in people because you're talking about weight and sluggishness and just the feel that people have in their whole bodies with all of their habits. So why don't you talk about this and how women, especially women, and you men listen too, because this has an effect of those that you care about. Believe me, it does, even of your mothers or whoever is in your life. But how can they maintain not just a false sense of confidence, but a true sense of confidence through this time when you're feeling like, your body doesn't look the way it did before, the weight is going on in different areas, which does happen. The genes don't always fit just the same they did when you were 20 or 25. They feel a little different. And so that's why you got those little tops that are a little different now, Right. So how do you maintain that sort of confidence?
Yes. I mean, that's a really good question. I would say the biggest component of developing a confident relationship with your body is really and truly to stop measuring yourself against your 20s and 30-year-old self or your teens Often, I will have women in their 60s and 70s wishing they could get back in that teenage body. But I say, well, but look at the way your brain worked back then. You couldn't make a good decision if it saved your life.
Right.
Now you have all this wisdom, and you can, but you just have to make that decision that it is that important to you to feel that way in your body. So I say it comes down to number one, stop comparing yourself to your 20s and 30s. Number two is to really think through, how do I want to spend my days? Our time is our greatest asset that we have. Our time is something we do control. We spend a lot of time on this topic of time in our program because we as women, we muscle through. Like you said, you had a 10-pound baby.
Yes.
Both of mine together combined did not weigh 10 pounds. She moved to like 4.5 and 4.5. So, wow. So we muscle through.
Yes.
There's something in our DNA that we muscle through. We're provers, we're fixers, we're strivers. And what we really need to do is take a deeper look back and take a step back and look at the future as the place where you want to live your days, how you want to live your days. Now, you may still have others that you're caring for. And that's probably one of your core values, is caring for those around you.
Exactly.
However, if your wellness is something that you want to take and make it a top 5 core value, we do a lot of core values work in our program, then let's set aside some time to figure out, what does that look like? It's going to be different than your 20s and 30s for sure. However, if you set aside 30 minutes every day, and it can be 5-minute increments, it can be 10-minute increments, it can be all at the same time, and you actually get in that 10-minute meditation, the 20-minute walk, and you do that consistently through works of small habits, as you and I have spoken about. We really work in small habit chunks. It's the way the brain works. Our willpower and our discipline start to go down as soon as the morning hours are over, which is why our breakfast is typically clean and our exercise is great in the morning. And that's why the way the brain works is we don't have that much discipline. But if we actually set aside time for small habits that are tiny and easy to achieve, you can get there. And so I think it's just a matter of changing the way you think about looking forward. How much time do I have in my day? How much time do I have in my week? Oh, I do have enough time.
Right. You mentioned a couple of things that I'm huge on, especially with our Hero Mountain Summit and the courses that I put together. Core values. We spend a lot of time on that because your core values are very important to spend time on before you really set a purpose, whether it's your purpose now or in the future, and deciding what you want your life to look like. And the reason I do what I'm doing is, and I'm going to continue working until my kids put me in a home. That's what I always say. So I'm going to keep going because I love what I do. Yeah. But I notice so many of those that are not using their skills, their resources, their experience, and they're kind of going, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? There are so many choices, and it's almost like there's too many, but you need to stop and think about what you really value. And if you want to travel at this point, schedule that in and work around it. That's exactly what I've been doing. And I have worked now around my schedule. I've done a lot of travel for my work and everything else, but now I want to travel more with my husband, and whether it's here in the U.S., or visiting kids, or doing some of those overseas travelings that I really wanted to visit, not just tour through those places working, as you hardly see anything when you're doing those sort of tours, but I wanted to experience some of that countryside. And so there's just different things that you can work your life around this and still give back and understand that you can still have a strong purpose. And I see some of the women that are doing this, some of the men that are doing this are the happiest they've ever been. And it's a wonderful privilege to have, but you need to stop and think through a lot of that. And that's why I put, some of these programs together, almost like it's a mentorship. That's what I'm calling, my programs now is a mentorship is what it is at this point, because many of us feel like we kind of need that guidance at this point. We had it when we were younger, but how do we get it now? So those are such great words of advice, Adrien. You have really worked hard and put such a great program together that's very, very needed And so I'm sure there are those that are listening and thinking, I need to check out all of this. So let's, I want to talk about a few of the diet hacks and some of the other, hacks that you have that people are going, yeah, but how do I really change that? So what do you have to say on that?
Well, when you say change that, you mean change that mindset of dieting? Is that what you're talking about?
And mindset of dieting, and maybe change their diet around. I mean, what are they, how are they eating? Are they having breakfast? Are they having different this is part of it, and you don't pay attention to. I mean, I was telling my granddaughter the other day, I was educating her a bit about the 4 food groups. We got what are you eating for breakfast? Why is your energy level not up when I'm working with you with, yeah, definitely.
Right. And this is a really big topic. We could talk about this for a very long time, but I will tell you some positive things that I coach the women in our program. Number 1 is to stop counting calories, because this starts right there with a negative feeling that I'm limiting. I don't want anything to limit me. I don't want anything in my life to be limiting anymore. I have, how many more ever years on this earth left? Right. I don't want to be limited by anything that I can possibly do. So I'd say stop counting calories. And if you want to count anything, count your protein in grams.
Great words of advice.
Count your protein in grams. We are all, me too, deficient in protein.
Right.
None of us. And in midlife, we particularly need more protein because our muscles are atrophying by the minute and our bones are doing the same at age 30.
Yes.
So for the past 27 years for me, my muscles have been atrophying, as have my bones. So, and your bones also become less flexible, and bones are supposed to be flexible. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? How do we replenish muscle? Well, we strength train. We'll get to that in a minute, because I know you'll ask about that. I'm very passionate about my strength training. And you feed yourself protein. So there is a formula that I share in our program that will calculate for you for every individual woman. It's different. So what your sister is doing, what your buddy at your book club is doing, what your colleague at work is doing, what the woman in the carpool line is doing, is going to be different than what you're doing. We need to calculate based on your lifestyle, based on your body weight. We're going to tell you how much protein you should be consuming in grams per day. You will be shocked. And it's a fun number because it's something we tend to not ever meet based on our, it's really interesting, right? It's a number, really, I don't reach it. I don't usually reach it. However, that's what I'm counting toward. Every time I eat, I want to get at least 20 to 25, possibly 30 grams of protein when I eat.
It's neat that you brought that up. Because one of our sons ended up being a personal trainer and put on 30 pounds of muscle. He was 2% body fat. He's still very lean, but he looked like Atlas because of all this muscle that he put on. But it was protein, and he still is very, very disciplined. He has kept that discipline throughout and working throughout. And at this point, he's an attorney. He's a busy guy. They just had their first, and so but he has kept those habits. And so establishing those good habits, like you talked about, I'm a big believer in tiny habits. There's great books about that. I put those in all of my articles. And it's very, very important. But I love that emphasis on the protein. And that's why, you can add a protein shake, or you can add some of those things and just add the protein in. My husband's a former professional athlete as well. And he adds that. And, there's a certain mindset for former professional athletes when their bodies changed, let me tell you.
Well, I bet that's tough.
Oh, yeah, it is. But we're keeping the active, our active lifestyle, which is as long as, and it's good. we have to talk through some of those things. And he's on my podcast once a month with me. And we were just as, now when this is released, you'll have to look up the podcast. I can put a link to it, but we did one on the importance of stretching and as well as strength training, but it gets even more important. I used to think that was a waste of time. So there are different areas of our workouts that are extremely important, especially as we age. Yes. And they're important enough for some insurance companies provide extra bonuses of, going to a place like a stretch lab or something. They know how important it is to keep up the balance, and it give you some protection against some of those falls and everything else. It's only going to help them in the long run. So, we can follow that trail. So let's talk about a couple more things with your strength training. That's a wonderful thing, and how you encourage that.
So we talked about confidence a little bit earlier. So I want to go back to confidence. Right. So watching one of our members lift a weight that she never imagined she would lift, we don't start there. Yes. We take baby steps. We crawl before we run the mile. Right. We don't run in our program. I mean, I encourage every woman to know that in danger, she needs to know how to run. Yes. And she needs to know how to do it properly. But trust me, that's not important. What's important for me now is to help women own the strength of their body. We all can do much more with our bodies than we typically attempt. And there's a little bit of a fear factor for a lot of women. There's a little bit of exercise having almost a negative connotation because way back when there was somebody who made fun of them on the playground. And that is still alive when you're mid-50s and your early 60s and mid-60s and 70s and your 80s and your 40s. We carry all of those feelings and all those memories here to now. And we have a fear with a lot of women about lifting. However, I also teach functional fitness. So what we do in our program is half of our sessions are strength training. The other half is on the wellness, around our wellness wheel that I've gone over with you. So anytime we put our body in a place where we're pressing against a force, that is resistance training. The force can be the ground. The force can be a wall. The force can be a couch. The force can be a band that we're playing with. Right. However, our bodies need that kind of movement, and our muscles need that nervous system engagement daily. Yes. I am really passionate about how our feet and hands are positioned. Our feet and our hands are the first and last place that are in contact with the floor, often with our strength training. So our program really includes several sessions on positioning of the feet, strengthening the feet, strengthening the hands. Having an appreciation for your hands and feet in your strength training is something that not a lot of companies are focused on. We tend to jump into these fitness programs without really, again, small habits, taking a walk before we run. And so I believe that the whole body needs it every day. Yes, every day. Does it need an hour every day? Well, it would be great, but most of us don't have an hour. But if I could get 30 minutes a day, that's going to come really far to get me my cardiovascular, get my VO2 max up, and it's going to give me that muscle that I need to replace the atrophy. And women, we're getting our DEXA scans every 5 years, right? So our DEXA scans are telling us about our bone density, and resistance training can also help you with your bone density, as does your diet. Right. Bone density scan. In fact, I got mine way too late. I just had my first bone scan, and you need to start a lot earlier. Yeah. And now they'll do it every 2 years, of course, I think at this point in my life. And, my doctor just looked at me and says, you have osteoporosis. Well, I know it's hereditary, but I've bumped up that strength training and just the resistance and how important that is. And it doesn't have to be hard. But it has to be continuous, and it has to be a part of that, because I'm big on cardio, because I just, I don't like to sweat, first of all, but then I feel like I've got to work out. But that's the strength training, the
resistance, the stretching, all of that is extremely important for that. And when you mentioned hands and feet, that's important too, because my mother-in-law had neuropathy. And that could be hereditary too. So, my husband's very aware of his feet and to make sure that, does he have all the feeling? But it's so, so important to pay attention to those bodies and what they're going through. And you can change different things. You can change your diet. You can add certain things in your diet, more calcium for me, more vitamin D for me, all of those things, just to at least pay attention to them. A lot of times we are getting a lot of that, but there's different things that we can do. So what are some other things that you would advise? And for those that are trying to, they're going through this stage now, okay, we've talked about habits. We've talked about exercise. We've talked about eating. We've talked about anything else in it? Maybe because it's kind of a stressful time. What would you do at this point, and how do we handle a little bit of that stress that we're handling?
Get to know your body. I would really say get to know the rhythm of your body. Again, not your book club member, not your sister, not your colleague at work, but your body, and know what's going on with her. And if you are in your mid to late 30s, you are already experiencing some form. There are 30 medically diagnosed, accepted symptoms of perimenopause. Like I said, the top 4 are vaginal dryness. That means we're just not interested in sexual intimacy because it hurts. Yeah. Number 2 is sleep disturbances. Number 3 is stress. And number 4 is weight gain. A lot of times I love to share with women, you're gaining weight because you're in perimenopause. There are things we can do about this. Yes. You don't have to gain weight. And a lot of doctors, unfortunately, are not schooled in perimenopause and menopause. And so they will tell you, they'll prescribe an antidepressant. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times women need something a little bit different. Right. The second thing they'll tell you is, you're in perimenopause and menopause. Mine did. And I adore her. I mean, she delivered my kids. But she told me, you're in perimenopause and menopause, that you're just going to gain weight. Well, I don't agree, because you don't have to. You have to change the way you view your body now. Right. And it's as a positive, as something you want to fuel and not something you're fighting against. Right. So I say, get to know your body, find a doctor who knows what perimenopause and menopause are, preferably a menopause specialist, and fuel yourself first. We say in our program, fill your bucket first before you fill anyone else. And that could be 5 minutes in the morning. I used to do that when my kids were young. But just lay down on the floor next to their toddler beds and do a little meditation or prayer. And that may have been all I got that day. Right. But at least I filled my own bucket first. Yeah. That's why I started getting up early, and then kids started getting up early too, but usually a little bit earlier than they did. So, and it worked well, because then I had my space. And that's a habit that's continued. I'll still get up before anybody usually, and have my little time. Also, I'm a big fan of taking a bath, and I'm pretty honest with that. Yeah, we talked about that the other day. I'm really burn up some salt baths. Yeah. 4 cups of Epsom salts nightly will really give you a big boost for your sleep. It's magnesium. It's how magnesium is absorbed. It's through the skin. Wow. Yes. Yep, and you can't do a lot when you're in the bath. No. Can't do laundry. I read, and then I end up just kind of drifting a little bit. I have a bathtub that's just the right size for me, so I'm not going to drown. That's important. Yes. So but that's it's good. I think giving yourself giving yourself permission, because you come from these strong women, they can do everything, or else from a previous generation where you don't take these breaks or whatever, or you don't take naps, or giving ourselves permission that, we need to be all we can be for being able to kind of continue giving out to others and to our families and being balanced in our own lives. Yes. So, well, this has been just a great, wonderful, wonderful time together. I know. I think the time flies, doesn't it? It does go on. I know we could go on forever, but it does fly. It's been a pleasure.
but we could have gone off on a bunch of different tangents and just talked about that. So at some point, I'll have you back. We'll have a lot of fun. So, but what's one word, if somebody's listening to this, you have someone listening, that was just so good. So, but what can I do right now? What could they do right now? Is besides, own your body and all of that. But I mean, they're in the car or they're taking a walk and okay, so listening to this, what can I apply right now?
Take a big, long, deep breath. You're beautiful just how you are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the way that God made you, or whatever your spiritual life is. Mm-hmm. And take a big, deep breath and look forward to an opportunity and to much more wisdom than you had before. Take a deep breath.
Breathing is extremely important. And I come from a background, of course, being a professional singer as well, and how important that breath is. That deep breath. It's a little different for dancers than singers, but it's still very, very deep. It's just a longer breath.
And for athletes, for resistance training, there's a technique that we teach. But breathing is, it's something like 1 million different cells are having a happy dance every time we take a deep breath.
They really are. And get outside, take that breath, enjoy what's around you. Don't ignore it. So
and leave the tech at home.
Hey, that's a tough one. So
I know.
We always have that handy, don't we?
Yes, I do.
Well, thank you so much. I hope it's just been such a pleasure. I love the podcast format and the interview format. It's just so much fun for me too. Make sure for all of you listeners that you listen and that you follow. I think that's what you do now. You don't just subscribe, but you follow our podcast. So you don't miss a single one. I've been putting in bonus podcasts this year. Many times I write articles around these interviews as well. And I speak twice a month. My husband and I come on, and all of them are on video. So you'll get to see how handsome he is. But it's just been such a wonderful time together. So I really appreciate you. All of you, make sure you're getting our articles too, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter, to say that slow, to make sure everybody's got that. But again, there'll be a lot of links in the show notes for this. And thank you so much, Andrea. This was a pleasure. And for all of you listening and still hanging on, I will look forward to being with you again next time. So bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.